Hi. I'm Harry, 24. And when I was 18, my mother left me overnight at her aunt's house, a woman I barely knew, and something happened that I still haven't told a soul until now. She said it was just for one night. Aunt Rhonda's expecting you. She smiled too wide, already pulling away from the curb like she couldn't leave fast enough. I had just graduated high school. No car, no job, no clue what came next. So I didn't argue. I just waved like a good son and walked up the gravel path with my duffel bag bouncing against my leg. The house smelled like rosewater and freezer-burned meat. I remember that clearly. Aunt Rhonda opened the door in a silk robe and heavy perfume like she just stepped off a cruise ship. Her face was tight, shiny in a way that didn't move right when she smiled. "Look at you," she purred, pulling me into a hug that lasted a second too long. "You've grown up, nicely." I laughed, awkward. Told her I'd just need a couch or floor and I'd be out of her hair in the morning. She poured me something to drink, cranberry juice, she said, but it tasted sour sharp. I took 2 sips and left the glass on the table. Her eyes followed me the whole time, like I was the TV and the TV had a secret. "Let me show you to the guest room," she said. The guest room had no bed. Just a mattress on the floor, candles in the corners, and an old radio playing something soft and creepy. She stood in the doorway and said, "Make yourself comfortable," but didn't leave. That's when my skin started buzzing. Something felt wrong. Not horror movie wrong. Real world wrong. The kind you don't process until your body does it for you. Chest tight, stomach cold, breath shallow. I made a joke, something stupid about the vibe, but she didn't laugh. She just sat on the mattress, patted the spot beside her, and said, "You know, your mom used to come to me when she was lonely too." I didn't sit. I stood there, trying to make my face polite but unreadable, scanning the room for my bag, my shoes, a light switch, a window. "Don't be shy," she said. "We're family, but we're not that kind of family." That was when I knew I was in trouble. I said I was tired. I said I needed to pee. I said anything to buy time. She blocked the door. And smiled. I didn't panic. Not outwardly. That's something I learned growing up with my mom. Freeze, observe, smile when you need to, then get the hell out when no one's looking. So I smiled. I said I needed to charge my phone. I even said I had a girlfriend who'd freak if I didn't check in. Aunt Rhonda narrowed her eyes like she was trying to figure out if I was bluffing, then slowly stepped back from the door. I grabbed my duffel, made it to the bathroom, locked the door, and just stood there, heart drilling into my ribs. I didn't even need to pee. I just needed space. I ran cold water over my hands, trying to figure out what the hell to do. I didn't want to believe what I just felt. That tension. That tone. The way she looked at me, not like an aunt, not even like a person. More like possession. Something she thought she could claim. I turned on my phone. No signal. Of course. Dead zone. I texted my mom anyway, like a fool. "Hey, this place feels off. Call me when you can." Then I deleted the message so Rhonda wouldn't see it if she snooped. I cracked the bathroom door after a while. The house was dim. Quiet. The radio was still playing that weird soft music. I peeked toward the guest room. Empty. I went to the kitchen fast. Pocketed my keys. Found my shoes. I was gonna say thanks and go sleep in my car, figure it out. I just needed to leave. But she was already standing by the front door. Blocking it. Wearing something even thinner than before. Like she changed while I was hiding. "You're not going anywhere," she said. Not angry. Not playful. Just matter of fact, like she was talking to furniture. I said, "I'm not feeling great. I just need to get some air." She smiled. "You don't look sick. You look scared." "That's different." Then she stepped forward. And I backed up. I'm 6 feet tall. She's maybe 5'5". But in that moment, I swear to God, she felt bigger. Like something else was in the room with us. Not just a person, something old and patient, and used to getting exactly what it wanted. "Why are you afraid of me?" she asked softly. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. She took another step. "I remember when you were born," she said. "Little pink thing, always crying. Your mom didn't know what to do with you. But I knew. I always knew what boys like you needed." I moved. Fast. Bolted for the back door. It was locked. She'd latched it. I yanked it hard enough to rattle the frame. She screamed something behind me, not words, more like a frustrated growl. I didn't look back. I grabbed a chair, bashed the latch loose, and got the hell out into the yard barefoot. I didn't stop running until I was 4 blocks away and puking in a gas station parking lot. And then my phone finally buzzed. A text from Mom. "Did you thank Rhonda?" I stared at my phone screen, that one line glowing in the dark. "Did you thank Rhonda?" It almost made me laugh, that flat, motherly text in the middle of what felt like a horror movie. I didn't answer. My hands were shaking too hard. I sat behind the gas station, trying to breathe, trying to decide what came next. I was 18, legally an adult, but not grown in the ways that mattered. I didn't want to call the police. I didn't even want to say her name out loud. I just wanted distance, a clean mile between me and that house. So I walked. The town was tiny. The streets rolled toward the ocean, damp and salty. I could still taste the drink she'd given me, metallic, sour, wrong. I spat into the gutter and kept going. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed again. "Mom, where are you?" "Rhonda says you left?" "Mom, don't be rude, Noah. She's family." That word family hit harder than I expected. Family had always been the excuse for everything in my house. Why we forgave, why we stayed quiet, why we smiled through things that weren't funny. I typed back, "I'm fine. Don't ask me to go back there." Then I turned the phone off. A trucker at the gas station let me sit in the diner booth till morning. He didn't ask questions. Bought me coffee and a breakfast sandwich and said, "You look like you saw a ghost." I told him that wasn't far off. When the sun came up, I caught a bus to the next town and crashed at a cheap motel. The sheets smelled like bleach, and it was the best smell I'd ever known. That's when the real mess started. By noon, my mother's calls stacked up. Then her voicemail, tight voice, cold tone. "Noah, I don't know what you think happened, but Aunt Rhonda said you were acting strange. You need to apologize. She was only trying to be kind." Kind. I could feel the floor tilt under me. I didn't call back. Instead, I texted one person, my friend Eli, the one who'd always said my family gave him bad vibes. I told him everything. No filters. The drink. The room. The door. He didn't reply for 5 minutes. Then, "Come stay with me. I don't care what your mom says. Just get here." That's when I realized I had a choice: go back and pretend nothing happened, or finally stop pretending for good. I picked the second one. I left my mother's world that day. I didn't know it yet, but nothing, not birthdays, not holidays, not her "You'll regret this" voicemails would ever glue it back together again. I didn't pack a thing. Just grabbed my duffel from the motel floor and took the next bus north to Eli's. It was 3 hours of cracked vinyl seats, engine rattle, and half-broken air conditioning, but it felt like movement. Like pulling out of something thick and invisible I hadn't realized was choking me. Eli met me at the station, no questions. He handed me a hoodie, tossed my bag in the back, and said, "You want food or silence first?" I said silence. He nodded. For 3 days I slept like the dead. I woke up hungry and confused, and every time I opened my eyes I expected to see that dim hallway again. Her shadow. Her voice. That silky robe. It stayed with me. It still does. On the 4th day, Eli broke the silence. We were eating cereal in his kitchen when he said, "You gonna tell anyone? A therapist? The cops?" I shook my head before I even thought about it. "I don't want this to be realer than it already is," I muttered. "If I say it out loud, I have to deal with all the fallout. The shame. The disbelief. My mom." Eli didn't push. He just said, "It's already real, man. The rest is just paperwork." That night I wrote my mom a message. Long, careful, but firm. "I left because your aunt made me feel unsafe. She crossed boundaries. I don't care if you believe me. I'm not going back, and I'm not sorry for leaving." No reply. The next morning, I was blocked. Blocked. By my own mother. She didn't ask what happened. Didn't want to. She chose Aunt Rhonda's version, that I was acting weird, disrespectful, ungrateful. I'd handed her the truth. She set it down and walked away. That's the moment the betrayal landed. Not that Rhonda was a predator, I could live with that horror. It was awful, but it was a single night. What hurt worse was knowing my own mom didn't want the truth. She wanted the illusion. Family. Reputation. Don't make waves. So I did the thing I'd never done before. I let her go. I deleted her number. Turned off my location. I told Eli, She's gonna spin this like I ran away. He shrugged. Then let her spin. You're not a top she gets to win anymore. It wasn't that easy, of course. The grief came in waves. Not just for what happened that night, but for what I lost afterward. For the version of my life that would never be whole again. The first time I told someone else what happened, it wasn't on purpose. It was about 6 months later. I was working night shifts unloading trucks at a warehouse, living on Eli's futon, trying not to think too much. We were hanging with a few of his friends after work drinking cheap beer, talking trash when someone made a joke about creepy ants, and everyone laughed. Except me. I just sat there, suddenly stone cold. Like my body had dropped 5 degrees. Eli noticed. He changed the subject fast, but the damage was done. One of the guys, Marcus, followed me outside for air. He lit a cigarette and offered me one. I shook my head. Then he said, "Something happened with yours?" And I just said it. Not the whole story. Not yet. Just the bones. Yeah. My mom left me with her aunt for a night. She tried something. I got out. Never went back. He didn't laugh. Didn't blink. He took a long drag, exhaled, and said, "That happened to my cousin. His uncle. No one believed him. Took years to crawl out of it." I looked at him. Really looked. This big dude with tattoos and a busted front tooth, and he looked like a damn lighthouse in that moment. "Do you believe me?" I asked. He flicked his cigarette and said, "Man, if you told me that house turned into a demon snake at night, I'd believe you. Some people just rot inside and wear human clothes. Doesn't mean you're crazy." That cracked something open. I started talking more after that. Not a lot. Not loud. But I let people in piece by piece. First Eli. Then Marcus. Then a girl I was seeing casually who asked about the scar on my hand from when I busted the back door latch. And the more I spoke, the less shame clung to me. I started therapy 6 months later. The free kind at the clinic that smelled like mildew and cheap coffee. The therapist was an older guy with a calm voice and zero judgment. First session, I told him I wasn't ready to say the word for what happened. He said, "Okay. Then we won't name it. We'll just talk around it until you're ready." That's when I learned something no one tells you. Trauma doesn't demand you remember everything at once. It waits. It hides. It shape-shifts. Sometimes it shows up as insomnia. Sometimes as panic in a grocery store aisle. Sometimes as that moment you flinch when someone touches your shoulder, even when it's someone you trust. I told my therapist about the way my mother texted me afterward, short, clipped messages like I was a delinquent kid who'd stolen money or wrecked a car. Not one message asked if I was okay. Just demands for explanations. "Why would you do this to her? You embarrass me. You owe her an apology." An apology? I laughed when I read that one. Not the funny kind. The kind that sounds like choking. The worst part? For a moment, a tiny part of me wanted to apologize not for what happened, but for breaking the narrative. For making things messy. For forcing people to look at something they didn't want to see. But then I remembered how it felt to yank that door open with her hands behind me. And that guilt turned to rage. And that rage turned into something cleaner, clarity. I didn't do anything wrong. She did. They did. And I had the right to say that. Out loud. In full sentences. The next time my mom tried to contact me, it was through a cousin. A casual message. "Your mom's worried. She says she misses you." I stared at it for 10 minutes. Then I replied, "Tell her I'm alive. But I'm not coming back for her comfort. I'm healing for mine." It felt like lightning. It felt like cutting a rope that had been tied around my throat since I was 18. That night, I sat on Eli's tiny balcony with a blanket and a bad beer and cried harder than I ever had in my life. No shame. No trying to be tough. Just full release. Because this is the part they don't show you in movies, the long, slow, ugly part of healing where no one claps, no one notices, and no one brings you flowers. You're just fighting to feel like yourself again. And maybe someday you will. You'd think once you survive the worst of something you'd be free. But surviving isn't the same as being free. Not even close. Freedom doesn't come in a single moment. It comes in 1,000 quiet choices, walking away from people who demand silence, refusing to shrink in conversations that touch old bruises, letting yourself laugh without guilt, cry without hiding, and breathe without explanation. 6 months after the balcony breakdown, I moved into a tiny studio apartment above a laundromat. The walls were thin, the floor was warped, but it was mine. No one knew the key code but me. For the first time in my life, I could sleep without bracing for footsteps in the hallway. I started writing in a spiral notebook Eli had given me. At first, it was just scribbles, fragments of that night I hadn't let myself remember. The color of her nails. The drink. The moment I realized I wasn't imagining it. The door handle cold in my hand. Then came the rest. The things I couldn't say even in therapy. Like how I blamed myself for not reacting faster. For not punching through the window. For freezing in the face of it. But that's what no one tells you, freezing is survival too. It's not weakness. It's biology. It's how the body protects itself when nothing else will. One night I wrote a line that made my hands go numb. If she'd been a man, everyone would have called it what it was. That's when the shame snapped. Because that's what held me back for so long, the weirdness of it. The fact that it was a woman. That she was old, family, that I was legal. That people would say, "Come on, you're a guy. You should have liked it." I didn't. It wasn't attention. It was a violation. And the silence I carried afterward was just another wound. I sent that line, just that one sentence, to my therapist. He wrote back one word. Exactly. I kept writing. I wrote a letter to my mom I never sent. I told her what really happened. Not vague suggestions. Not polite euphemisms. I told her how Rhonda cornered me. I told her how scared I was. I told her I ran out barefoot into the night, and how she had texted me to say I should be grateful. Then I wrote the line I had never dared to even think. You failed me. I folded that letter, stuck it in the back of a book, and never mailed it. I didn't need to. Saying it was enough. Around that time, I got an email from a different cousin. One I barely spoke to. She said she heard I had a falling out with the family and just wanted to say she believed me. I wrote back. What made you say that? She replied. Because Aunt Rhonda did the same thing to me. When I was 16. And the ground fell out from under me again, not with fear this time, but with clarity. With connection. With rage that finally had a direction. It wasn't just me. It never was. That cousin and I started talking. Swapping stories. Comparing dates. Realizing the adults around us must have known something. Rhonda didn't just suddenly turn into a predator. She was enabled. Shielded. Ignored. And when I told Eli, he just nodded and said, "That's how these things stay buried." Generational silence. You didn't break it, you dug it up and dragged it into the light. We talked about confronting her. Publicly. Legally. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. I needed more than justice. I needed peace. So I built it myself. Brick by brick. Boundary by boundary. I got a job at a bookstore. Started school online. Got a cat named Lemon who sleeps on my chest and bites my fingers when I stay up too late. I changed my number. Blocked my mom's email. And I gave myself permission to say the hardest truth of all. She doesn't get access to me anymore. Not as a mother. Not as a victim. Not as anything. I stopped waiting for her apology. I stopped rehearsing what I'd say if she ever gave one. Because I realized the healing I needed wouldn't come from her. It had to come from me. And piece by piece it did. It's strange, the things that start to heal you when you finally stop pretending you're fine. For me, it was the small stuff, clean sheets, the smell of coffee in the morning, the hum of the laundromat downstairs. It was realizing that safety isn't always about locks and alarms, sometimes it's about knowing no one has a key but you. 2 years passed. I finished my first semester of community college. Psychology major. Naturally, I wanted to understand the mechanics of people like her, like my mother. How denial can sound like love, how silence can masquerade as protection. By then, the nightmares had started to fade. They still came sometimes, her perfume, that voice in the dark, but now they ended differently. In the dream, I always found the door. I always got out. And that tiny rewrite, that small victory inside my head, meant more than any courtroom could have. My therapist said, "That's your brain realizing you're safe now." Safe. It felt foreign at first, like trying on a word that didn't belong to me. But I kept saying it until it fit. Then, one night I got an email. Subject line: "I'm sorry." It was from my mother. I stared at it for an hour before opening it. She wrote that she'd talked to Rhonda. That things got misunderstood. and that she wanted to put the past behind us. She even said she hoped I'd be mature enough to see both sides. Both sides. I laughed. Out loud. Alone in that little studio with Lemon glaring at me for disturbing her nap. It wasn't an apology. It was PR. I didn't reply. I printed it, folded it, and slid it into the same drawer that held the unsent letter I'd written her. Two halves of the same lie, one spoken, one silenced. A month later, Rhonda died. Heart failure. My cousin texted me. She's gone. What do we do with that? I didn't know. I walked for hours that night, through the empty streets, letting the cold bite my face. I thought about confronting her, about all the words that would never be said now. And somewhere in that silence, I realized something terrifying and freeing at once. She couldn't touch me anymore, not physically, not through guilt, not through my mother. That was the night I forgave myself. Not her. Never her. Just me. For being scared. For running. For surviving in the only way I could. I started volunteering at a support center the next semester. Not as a speaker, not yet, just helping with paperwork, serving coffee, listening. But the first time a young guy came in and sat trembling in that same chair I once filled, I knew exactly what to say. It's not your fault, I told him. You're not crazy. You're not weak. You made it out. That's what matters. He nodded, eyes wet, and whispered, You too? I just said, Yeah. That single word felt heavier than any confession I'd ever made. But it didn't break me. It grounded me. It made me real again. These days, I still dream about that night sometimes. But it's not a nightmare anymore. It's a reminder. The moment I realized I'd never let anyone define me by my pain again. Because pain isn't who I am. Survival is. And somewhere, between the hum of washing machines and the click of my cat's claws on the floor, I learned that healing isn't loud. It's quiet, ordinary, almost invisible until one morning, you wake up and realize you're living, not just remembering. I'm 24 now. 6 years since that night. 6 years since I ran barefoot through wet grass and told myself I'd never belong anywhere again. Turns out, that wasn't true. I do belong, just not where I was born. I built something small but solid, a routine, a few friends who don't flinch when the air gets heavy, a cat that curls around my neck like armor. My apartment still sits above the laundromat, though I finally replaced the buzzing light in the kitchen and painted the walls a color that isn't fear. Some mornings I catch my reflection in the window and almost don't recognize myself. Not because I've changed beyond recognition, but because I look steady. That's new. I've learned that healing isn't about erasing what happened, it's about integrating it, folding the scar into the skin of your story so it stops aching every time you move. For years I wanted to undo everything. The house, my mother, the silence, the shame. Now I just want to live with it honestly. Last month, my cousin, the one who told me she'd been hurt too, asked if I'd come with her to a support group meeting for survivors. I almost said no. I thought I'd moved past needing rooms like that. But I went. The chairs were arranged in a circle, the coffee was bitter, the fluorescent lights were merciless. A kid, maybe 19, was talking about his uncle and how no one believed him. His voice cracked, and the room went quiet. Without thinking, I said, I believe you. The words came out steady, like muscle memory. The kid nodded once, like it mattered. Maybe it did. When I got home that night, I opened the drawer with both letters, the one I wrote to my mother, and the one she'd sent me. I read them again, front to back, like two people trying to speak across a canyon. Then I tore them in half. Both of them. Dropped them in the trash, not as revenge, not as closure, just as release. I don't need her apology anymore. I don't need her permission to heal. The next day, I drove back to that coastal town for the first time since I was 18. The house was still there, same peeling shutters, same crooked mailbox. Someone else lives there now, a family maybe. There was a bike in the yard, a dog barking inside. I stood on the sidewalk, breathing salt air, waiting to feel something. But all I felt was distance. Not the trembling, heart-racing kind. Just space. Like I'd finally stepped all the way out of a shadow. Before I left, I walked down to the beach. The tide was high, the sky low and gray, the horizon a smear of silver. I threw a small stone into the surf and said quietly, I made it. No audience. No applause. Just the sound of waves swallowing the past one breath at a time. Back in my car, I realized the memory of that night no longer made my hands shake. It was still there, but it lived somewhere else now, behind me, not inside me. That's what healing does. It relocates pain, turns it from a home into a landmark. These days, when people ask about my family, I keep it simple. I say, we don't talk much. And that's enough. Because my story isn't about what they did, it's about what I became after. I became someone who understands that survival isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning of every good one. And if I ever have kids someday, I'll teach them the thing my mother never did, that family is supposed to make you feel safe, not small. That love never demands silence. That when someone says, it's just one night, you listen to the voice in your gut that says, leave. The past doesn't vanish. It transforms. It grows quieter, less hungry. It stops dictating who you are and starts reminding you what you overcame. So yeah? I'm Harry, 24 now. Once, my mom left me at her aunt's house for a night. And I ran. That's not the tragedy. That's the miracle.